Ollie Gordon's back on the field and Mike Gundy is still in reality. So yeah, tell your agents to stop calling him.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of our favorite foosball. Not only that, our favorite player on the foosball field, Ollie Gordon, is back out on there. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a smaller sample size. Of course, they're going to bring him back, somewhat slowly. But the fact that he's even back already, obviously, is very, very good news. Regardless of what this, ends up meaning, it obviously is a clear indication that Ollie Gordon is going to play. Sorry, SDSU. Maybe you got your hopes up out there, but it appears as though that Ollie is on track to be healthy, to be ready to rock and roll against SDSU. Now, regardless of the health of Ollie Gordon, and if he is going to be 100% ready to rock and roll for week one, regardless, I think this is a pretty good time for us all to recognize that it doesn't matter if Ollie Gordon is needed to get a bulk of the carries, or as I would suspect, even if he, comes back through this next week and a half and is fully ready to rock and roll, there's no need to put unnecessary stress on Ollie Gordon. So this is an opportunity for everybody else on the team to kind of rise to the occasion and deliver home the message that Ollie Gordon doesn't need to be on the field for an exorbitant amount of time. We need to take care of business, get a lot of 3-and-outs defensively, as we'll talk about a little bit later on. But from an offensive perspective, whether it be Trent Howland, Sesi Ve'alahi, if we go down to the Rodney Fields route, or if we decide to throw the ball up significantly to the wide receiver core, this is all a winning ticket for Oklahoma State, in my opinion. Obviously, let me know down in the comment section for those of you on YouTube, my podcasting people out there. I appreciate you all. My regulars, a.k.a. the regulators out here. This is a wonderful time, as you all know. But Mike Gundy, he's in rare form. I want to say rare form, but we're ready to dominate form, I guess you could say. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why is it that Mike Gundy is getting ridiculed once again, right? Whenever he made the comment in regards to, being involved and drinking a little bit and going down the country road 1,000 times. Was it said maybe the least eloquently as possible? Yeah, maybe. But ironically enough, it was just weird to me that so many people are jumping on Mike Gundy for making that kind of comment because, yeah, maybe it shouldn't have been said, but it's also the reality of the situation. It's also the reality for most of us out here is throughout the course of college, you're going to experiment. You're going to do some things. I'm not saying that it's right, but a collegiate football player is going to experience far more than your traditional everyday student. Well, I think this is another one of those situations where he said something that should be viewed as awesome, right? The fact that he's getting ridiculed for saying something that I would view as common sense. There's going to be a time where everybody should be having conversations about money. And there's also going to be a time to buckle down and focus on football. If there's going to be windows for transfers, those are the windows where agents and whomever else is involved in the financial side of the things should have some say in the situation. But then there's also got to be a time where you put everything else down and you just focus on football. Unfortunately, this is somewhat reminiscent of the NFL. Whenever the NFL is lobbying, around this time to get a bigger contract, they're refusing to report or go to OTAs or go to mini camps or things of that nature because they're waiting on something financially to come in. That's not this time. That time was before spring and even to some degree in spring. If you want to have a discussion, on whether it makes sense to have this all happen during spring. I think some would argue that even during spring, you shouldn't be involved in potentially having these discussions and conversations. But certainly the fact that he's catching a hard time over something that just seems so logical, it's mind-blowing to me. So, of course, let me know down in the comments section what your thoughts on this whole thing is. Surely some of you are going to disagree with the DUI comment, just like some of you might disagree here. But please help me understand what I'm missing. Like, why is Mike Gundy getting chastised for making a comment that should be common sense? There's a time to negotiate. There's a time to get ready. And there's a time that all of that needs to be pushed to the side. It's football time. In my opinion, when fall camp starts, there should be no conversations from any agents anywhere anymore discussing pay. That part of it is over. So I'm glad Mike Gundy said it. I don't understand, again, why he's catching all this vitriol over saying something that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. But it is what it is. I stand with Gundy on this one. I don't want to rush Ollie Gordon back too much, which is why I would be kind of interested to see if we hold him back. I would assume that we would, just because, again, I hope that it's not a massive necessity. I hope that Trent Hallen and Sessi Vealahi can do everything we need to take care of SDSU. I think that they're a good team, but I don't think they're team good enough to stop Trent Hallen for 4 quarters. And then if you sprinkle in what Sessi can do, some of the emergence of what we've seen from Rodney Fields, I think is fairly reminiscent of what we're going to get out of Sessi. So I feel pretty confident of where we stand right now at the running back room, even if Ollie Gordon were to be held back a little bit. Speaking of holding back, guys, Coach Jason McIndoe has been on staff for quite some time, and it's been a mixed bag thus far. I think a lot of us revert back to the trying times of seeing Jelani Woods excel after leaving Oklahoma State. It is what it is, just like it is what it is when it's time for you to get in on the money-making season with FanDuel. Guys, this whole summer has not been giving us everything that we could have physically possibly wanted whenever it came to the sports section. FanDuel understands that, which is why FanDuel is up in the ante right now and giving you all the opportunity to be part of America's #1 sports book. You've heard us all talk about FanDuel. Well, we have something a little bit different for you this time around. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, when a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel any time you want. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go there today to get squared away in your money-making department with FanDuel and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Because the season is right around the corner. We are literally counting the days because we have one more Saturday without college football. And is it going to be the days of Jason McIndoe? Of course, everybody is very aware that Coach McIndoe wasn't exactly given the most to work with, but some of that was because he was taking defensive ends and fullbacks and converting them to tight ends and what we had in this mixed bag called a cowboy back. So basically, we tried to mold a tight end and a fullback and put them together. The problem with it was it's really hard to recruit that way because who are you going to recruit? A fullback and hope that you can teach them how to play tight end, or vice versa. What we were doing basically was getting defensive ends that maybe had some tight end-ish experience and then converting them to more of a fullback, H-back, somewhat pseudo tight end role. And then we went back to a real tight end. And for the first time last season, we saw a tight end that was very productive. I think that all of us would agree he could have been more productive. There were several times that we all noticed that there was Josiah Johnson leaking out in the flat or being over by the numbers kind of wide open. Maybe it was part of going through the keys for Alan Bowman or going through all of the, the wide receivers in the route trees. Maybe Josiah Johnson was pushed back a little bit further into the route tree, or maybe Alan Bowman just, made decisions a little bit quicker. Is this the time that Alan Bowman can sit in the pocket and find a way to get the ball to the tight end? Well, with all of the returning offensive linemen, the answer should be yes. But not only that, when you look at fullback even, guys, we've got Jake Schultz, one of those defensive ends that was converted over to be this pseudo, tight end, cowboy back kind of guy. We have him as a true kind of fullback now. Plus, you have Coach McIndoe's boy. He's back there as another fullback that we can rely on, that the coaches know isn't going to be a major obstacle if he needed to play. And then you have Bryce Drummond. Bryce Drummond athletically might be the most gifted of all of them. So that takes away from what Coach Jason McIndoe had to do previously, which was essentially coach two positions. I know myself, right, and a plethora of other people were confused as to what role Jason McIndoe actually had as a staff member, because there was no development in the tight end game for a long time, even though that was his designated role. Now, we did see a decent amount out of fullbacks here and there, so it wasn't all bad. But last year, there's times Josiah Johnson could have gotten more ball. Is this year, are we going to see that this year with Tyler Foster? Well, I believe so. Again, partially because of that offensive line. He's going to have more room than he's potentially ever had before. Maybe not even dating back to some of his times at Michigan. Definitely not at Texas Tech. Alan Bowman's in a very rare position. And even if it weren't to be Alan Bowman, if something were to happen, God forbid to Alan Bowman, and Garrett Rangel were to come in or Zane Flores were to need to come in, the offensive line is going to be able to guide this boat pretty seamlessly. So I think the answer to this question is yes. This will be a year that Jason McIndoe is able to show that the tight end position in Stillwater is becoming more and more important, which I think is massively beneficial for the future of our recruiting, especially at this position. Tight end is a spot that we haven't had a lot of, but if you go back to somebody like a Brandon Pettigrew, some of us old school heads, Alonzo Mays, and even Marcellus Rivers, there was a time where Oklahoma State tight ends were a very big deal, even if you fast forward to Billy Badgema, and then you have a break, and then you have Blake Jarwin, and y'all have heard me all talk about how I thought Blake Jarwin was mismanaged, just like I thought to some degree Josiah Johnson was mismanaged. Or was it just a lack of being able to get him as an integral part of the route tree on enough of the plays? Maybe that was it. No matter what number he is on the route tree, though, with that amount of time that any quarterback is going to have behind our offensive line and our fullbacks and our running backs, it should allow the tight end position to be able to grow a little bit more. That is why I think we should focus on that, because this should be a position that we utilize moving forward, right? The SEC is more to airing it out. The Big 12 has gone back to a little bit more of the old school. And ironically enough, you bring an old school member back in Colorado. So it's the changing of the times in the Big 12, as we've seen in the SEC, more of a Big 12 trend. Well, now we're going more this power-oriented style. So as much as the SEC can tell defensive linemen, or even to some degree offensive linemen, you got to come to the SEC because we're the best ticket. We're the fast-track way for you to get the development you need to get to the NFL. Well, when it comes to development, Rob Glass has squashed a lot of the concerns of any recruit out there in the country, or parent, or high school, coach, trainer, nutritionist, whatever it is. The development that you get at Oklahoma State is very rare. So that's not even a concern, thankfully. We just need to see that next step of the evolutionary process for Coach Jason McIndoe. We'll all admit together that in the beginning, your job wasn't easy, even though you're an O-line guy, right, that spent 14 years as an O-line dude. I think, that blocking fullback role was very good for you at one point in time. Now we got to see a little bit more of the Cowboy tight end as a true tight end last season with Josiah Johnson. Josiah Johnson had more opportunities. I think Josiah Johnson probably left 200 yards, 250 yards on the table, but it wasn't all due to him. Sometimes it was 1, 2, 3, get the ball out, right? So not really a lot of time to go through the progression and get through all the reads. So we don't know if it was Josiah Johnson not being a part of the reads, or maybe Alan Bowman just going through the process, getting sped up too much that he didn't get to Josiah all the time in the reads. Regardless, could be a big year for Tyler Foster. I think Quentin Stewart, he's one of those cowboy back Jake Schultz types that needs to separate himself from being, lumped into that old school kind of cowboy back category. And then you have Tabor Shetron. Athletically, there's never been a question. If you go back and look at his film from Edmond Santa Fe, whenever he came over with his brother Talon, but there was clearly an athletic ability there. And then the basketball background, that pedigree athletically gave us a really good canvas to work with. We just don't know how it's going to translate when you also bring together the blocking side of things. So the development there is still ongoing. But if you look at the specimen that he is coming in already, if he can kind of figure everything out, I think that's another really good get. And then, of course, we have Jordan Vaborny and Tanner Butler that were coming in for this next recruiting class. That'll be big. But in order to keep getting some of the top-end tight ends, people need to see us utilize them. That's why I think this is a huge season for the tight end position and Coach Jason McIndoe. We need to see that maturation process from him, right? We saw a little bit last year with Josiah Johnson. We need to see that next step. And if we don't get it, I do fear that it'll hurt the tight end recruiting in the future. But if Tyler Foster has a big year, or Quentin Stewart has a big year, or even Tabor Shetron has a big year as a tight end, I do think that this starts to become a little bit more of a yearly occurrence for us. Getting a couple legitimately nice tight ends that not only fit in with the Cowboy culture, but fit in with what Coach Jason Mack and this offense is steadily climbing to achieve more and more of, which I think is more of an even 50-50 ratio. Mike Gundy's always been a running back guy. Mike Gundy's always preferred running the ball, but there's going to be times that the quarterback and the wide receiver core and the tight end are going to have to step up and bail you out. Is this the season that we see it? I think it should be because of the offensive line and the returning veteran experience we have at quarterback, both with Garrett Rangel and Alan Bowman. Just like the linebackers. See, I appeared on the Voice of College Football Mark Rogers show, and I had a little baby epiphany in doing so whenever it comes to our linebacker core. So I wanted to kind of sprinkle that over here with you guys as well. But first, we got to talk about you being the MVP and you also knowing it's really hard to be the MVP of anything if you can't get there. eBay Motors has the right passion, drive, and patience for you to turn your day into a constant W. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep it up to peak performance, whether it be superchargers, roof racks, LED lighting kits, and more. Speed, power, style, doesn't matter. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, it's super easy to keep your ride or die rig alive. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your rig every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, the objective is to have you burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, all the prices you want, it is very easy to turn your car into the MVP today. Bring home your next big W by keeping your ride or die rig alive at ebaymotors.com. Again, that is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available for U.S. customers. Because, of course, we're special over here in Viva La America. And I think we're more and more blessed at linebacker than a lot of us even thought, right? So there's been two different publications, which we covered previously, that ranked Oklahoma State's offensive line and linebacker core very, very high up. And it was kind of brought up this morning about how some people do view Oklahoma State's linebacker core as one of the top in the country, right? But then I realized that all of those publications and any other publication that has written about the talent of Oklahoma State's linebacker core are talking about Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, and Justin Wright. as they should be, because Justin Wright brings over almost 230 tackles in less than 2 seasons at Tulsa. Plus, we have to take into consideration that the All-American Nick Martin's getting snubbed right now, so maybe he's got an extra level of motivation. Colin Oliver has more opportunities this year to kind of go back to some of his defensive end routes while still being a linebacker. Then you have the news of Kendal Daniels, the freshman safety All-American, who went from 204 pounds to 244 pounds, but still able to run pretty much the same 40s whenever he came over from high school. Guys, there's going to be a little bit of a transition. And I think the A&M knew that as well. But thankfully, they messed up. They made some things not happen that allowed him to come bring his high 4-star, potential 5-star to Stillwater, Oklahoma. And we were able to benefit from that. Not immediately. He had to take a little bit of a redshirt year. But the next season, we saw that, and we were the beneficiaries of it. Then we saw him last season athletically be able to do some stuff, but we call it spade a spade. There was also times that Kendal Daniels kind of peeled off when he was running down the field. So I think a decent amount of people thought, well, maybe is it a lack of speed? I think, as others have pointed out, right, it's not original thought by me, but it was maybe like a lack of motivation, that he just didn't necessarily want to be sprinting down the field like a safety 24/7. But whenever you just asked him to naturally, hey, do your thing, right? Gloves off, mask off, just rip it and roar. That's when we saw Kendal Daniels do some miraculous NFL level stuff. He would do it at 120 miles an hour, so he made mistakes while doing so. But all of us saw that little sliver of the freshman All-American and knew that he could be huge. Well, that was somewhat figuratively, but he actually physically got huge. And he's still able to maintain that athleticism and that initial burst, right? That quickness, that 10-split style speed. It's going to make him an absolute nightmare in a phone booth for anybody. So this linebacker core that was already viewed as pretty daggone good by a lot of publications, if not one of the top 5 in the country by several, they didn't even know about Kendal Daniels being a linebacker. So if we're already a top 5 linebacker core in the country, plus you add Kendal Daniels, what does that mean? Does that mean this Cowboy linebacker room has the ability to be the number 1 linebacker room in the country? Yes. Now they just have to go out and prove it. They have to statistically put it down and make it happen. Just like we need Sean Snyder to continue to sprinkle in his magic. We all knew that when you give somebody like Hudson Clark to somebody like Sean Snyder, the world is our oyster that we're all be able to watch. We're going to watch this pearl be formed this season, and the pressure is not going to be an issue. And then we also have West Fall. So if you need the big leg guy, you have that. If you need the pinpoint guy in Hudson Clark, you have that. But if you also need the athleticism in Hudson Clark, you're not going to find that anywhere else in America for the most part. Then whenever you look a little bit deeper on, though, it was kicker, right? That was the scary portion for the Oklahoma State special teams. Not even a return man. We know what we have in Brennan Presley. We knew what we had at least a little bit in spring with A.J. Green. Please give us that again. But you've got DeJuan Lawson. You've seen what he can do at Virginia Tech. You look at Gavin Freeman. We've been able to see what he could do at OU. So the special teams has been able to focus on kicking. So that means Logan Ward is likely to be getting significantly better, which is huge because that was our biggest concern. The biggest concern for Oklahoma State entering the fall was kicker. The biggest concern for Oklahoma State leaving the fall, still kicker, but it's not as big of a concern. If we're going to sleep good at night, it's because of somebody like a Sean Snyder. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a worry still yet, but I think that we're already seeing some improvements from Logan Ward because of the fine-tuning, the little meticulous details that Sean Snyder can provide that nobody else could. Guys, this was Mike Gundy's job last year. This was what Mike Gundy was doing. And we were pretty good at, special teams all around. Imagine what this season's going to be with a true savant behind the helm. It's going to be a pretty fun time to be part of the special teams. And then, guys, David Taylor, we're going to save some of it. You know that this is a big deal whenever you're getting messages, right, from other creators about wrestling. Like, this is what we're going to have to end up talking about is a wrestling conversation, because David Taylor has created a rivalry by recently bringing in Roman Bravo Young to join the RTC program. And then, of course, Jordan Oliver winning his PFL debut, meaning he's only a matter of time before he's climbing up to the UFC. But this is another dude that David Taylor's bringing in that Penn State country's up in arms about. And I'm saying that because I got messages like, okay, we got to have this conversation. This almost seems personal now, coming from some Penn State people. They feel like this is now becoming personal, that it's not just David Taylor over here, you know, trying to build a career, that now he's taking dudes that are Penn State legends that have been lined up forever to be Penn State legends. And I completely get it, guys. We would all be equally upset if Penn State went and grabbed Randy Couture and, well, we just talked about the Johnny Big Rig Hendricks and Dayton Fix, right? And DC. If Penn State started grabbing up all these dudes, we would be livid. Like, we would be screaming at the top of Gallagher Iba rafters, what is happening, Chad Weiberg? Why are all of our top dudes, all of our legendary wrestlers, why are they going to work for Penn State? Why are they going to teach Penn State wrestlers how to beat us? And it would be just like this, right? It would be, if it was one guy, okay, no big deal. Another guy, okay, well, that's not very fun. And now you're taking Bravo Young. I know that's a big deal. You don't have to be a wrestling, enthusiast to the core to know who Roman Bravo Young is and to know how big of a deal this is. So you've got Jimmy Kennedy, you've got Thomas Gilman, now you've got Roman Bravo Young, and I'm hearing that there's another one potentially coming that would have Penn State country losing their ever-loving mind. So this is kind of fast-tracked, right? This went from could be a kind of a big deal, right, to, okay, we got Tyler Caldwell involved now. That's kind of a big deal. Oh, we got Jimmy Kennedy involved now. That's a very big deal. Thomas Gilman, you're talking about the dude who everybody in the country, including Penn State, wanted to hire. He's here. Oh, this is definitely a big deal. And now there's this with the potential for more. But we're going to have this conversation and a crossover with Penn State. And we're going to talk about this whole thing because he covers wrestling all day, every day. He's going to know more about this than I am. And I am going to poke the bear a little bit because I do know the Penn State country is going crazy. If we get this next guy, this whole thing is completely flipped on its head. It's now officially a rivalry. And trust and believe, they're going to hate us. So maybe it's time to embrace the hate, because for a long time, that was Oklahoma State wrestling that everybody in the country hated, and we had a massive target on our back. That's become Penn State. But David Taylor's blown this thing up even more. I choose violence sometimes, so I'm okay with it. Just like I'm okay with telling you fine, folks. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Speaking of, for your second listen, go check out Locked On Nittany Lions and hear what they're saying. Okay? Because David Taylor's stirring the pot. I can promise you that. All right, y'all. I appreciate you because you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't, that's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, you're the bricks, the butter, the fondue, the mountain, and everything that goes with it. I appreciate you. Hit the stars, leave a review, do what you do. All righty. Later, taters.